100 miles to go. 100 miles to go. Don't ask me why I do it, I don't know. Miles by foot. 100 miles by foot. Don't ask me why I do it, I can't stay put. Rain is a coming, can't give a fit. Rain is a coming, can't give a fit. Don't ask me why I do it, but I am legit.
Hello, this is Aaron Saft on the MR Runningpains podcast. With 30 years of running experience and 20 years of coaching, I thought it time to share with you things I've learned and people I've met so that you can try things for yourself and see if they help your running. Thanks for joining me. Today is July 1st, 2020, and I thought it about time in the podcast I got into one of my passions of running, and that's footwear. I like today to talk about gear, talk about shoes and their function, how they should fit, some misnomers, some things you can do, and just go over the most important gear item that we use in our footwear. So, first thing I'll say, having owned my own running store, that it's great if you can support local. I know that's not always a possibility. Sometimes your local run shop doesn't carry the shoe that you want, or they can't get the shoe that you want. But if you can support local, please do. Those guys are doing a lot for the community. Usually they're the ones that are sponsoring races and putting on group runs and training groups and all that good stuff. So, hopefully your running store is doing a lot for your community, and it'd be great if you can give back. So please support those guys. When I sat on the fitting bench not so long ago, I would always try to take a look at the foot, right? Everybody's feet are different. A lot of times people would come in and ask me, what's the best running shoe? And I would say, whatever fits your foot the best and feels the best to you. There are good running shoes. There are top sellers, of course, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best for your foot. You may have a friend that say, this is the greatest shoe ever, and it may be the worst shoe for you. So don't always just go off of a shoe review or what your training partner is using. Be selective. Make sure it's working for you. Don't go off of what's popular all the time. You can certainly try it, and if it works for you, that's great, obviously. But take a few things into consideration, and that's kind of what I want to get into today is fit and function of the shoes, how they should fit, how they should feel, and we'll go from there. So the first thing that I always say is that if you can pull out the insole of the shoe, take that out and put your foot on top of it and stand on it, just like it would be on the inside of your shoe. That's going to give you kind of a visual cue, a snapshot, if you will, of what your foot's going to look like inside of that shoe. So if your foot is on top of the insole and any part, your foot or your toes, that hangs over the edge, that means that the shape of the shoe, the last of the shoe, is not right for you. For instance, if you put your toes on there and one of the toes hangs over the front of the shoe, then it's not long enough. If a pinky toe hangs off the side, then it's not cut right for you. It needs to be a little bit rounder. If the ball of your foot, the width of your foot, behind the big toe where kind of the bones are, the ball there, if that hangs over the sides of the insole, then it's not wide enough for you. So these are things that you can look at quite easily and tell, is this shoe going to fit me? Is it going to be too tight? Is it too short? Is it the right shape? It's a very simple thing to do. And you can look on your current insoles and kind of see. Maybe you're having a toe that keeps losing a toenail, or you keep rubbing a blister on the end of a toe. All of these things, if you can kind of tell by looking at your insole. You can also tell where pressure is. So, for instance, if you're seeing an imprint of the ball of your foot in the insole of your shoe, and you're having a lot of forefoot pain, there's a few things that could be going on there, but that's an indicator that perhaps something's not going right with the fit of your shoe or the function of your shoe, and maybe it's time to examine, perhaps like an over-the-counter insole to help, or or a different pair of shoes entirely. So take a look at that insole, especially when buying a new shoe, just to make sure that the fit's right. There's a lot of things that go on with the shape of the shoe, and you can kind of see that from the insole, as I was talking about. Is it too curved? Is your foot too curved and the shoe's too straight? Does your big toe come over the inside of the insole? Again, these are just simple things to look at when you're fitting. So take that into consideration. The other thing I'll say is that when sizing a shoe, there's no universality. So in other words, there's no size 9 is a size 9 in every company. When I go downstairs to go into my shoe cabinet, I have, shoes that are size 11, and I have shoes that are size 11 and a half, and I have a couple that are size 12. Just because not all shoes are made the same way. Not all are cut the same way. Obviously you can get too big. We're not looking for, too much in front of the longest toe. In my case, my second toe is my longest toe, so I fit to the longest toe. But you want about 1/3 of an inch in front of that longest toe. That we talk about the thumb width. The thumb might be a little too much, but a 1/3 of an inch is a full size. So if you were to go on a measuring device, we call them Brannick devices, and you measure, let's say, for myself, I measure on a size 10 and a half. I would go up a full size from 10 and a half. General, this is a general rule of thumb. I would go up a full size to an 11 and a half for my foot, because a full size is 1/3 of an inch. So a half size is 1/6 of an inch. You can also use the Brannick to determine width and see if you do need, a wide or a narrow, or if you are true to size. Quickly, a women's normal, I shouldn't say normal, excuse me, a regular width is a size B, as in boy. A men's regular width is a size D, as in David. So for a woman, a wide is a D. So if a woman was to try on a man's shoe, she would be in a wide shoe for her. Now you have to adjust the length. Length does not coordinate across men's to women's shoes. you would have to go down a size and a half in a men's shoe. So if a woman size 9, she would be a men's size 7.5. But again, it would, in a men's shoe, that would be a wide. So when you're fitting, if you put on a men's shoe, the men's shoe for a woman is going to be wide. Now in a men's shoe, the wide is a 2E. It goes up to 2E for a wide and 4E for extra wide. Again, women's wide is D, and extra wide would be 2E. So, again, we're going up a size from what our foot measures. You may wear your foot size in a casual shoe. We're not looking to have extra space in front of the longest toe in a casual shoe. So you may wear your actual foot size. So I may actually wear a 10.5 if I'm comfortable with that in a dress shoe. Whereas in a running shoe, we need that space because the foot is going to expand. When that foot comes down and we push weight onto it, the arch is going to expand, and we need a little bit room for that expansion so that our toe isn't hitting the front of the shoe all the time. That's what that little room is, the extra room is for. Also for, swelling. If you're doing a longer run, the foot swells a little bit. It needs a little room for that as well. If you're going downhill, the foot's going to shift ever so slightly in the shoe. We don't want it to, but it's, if you're going down a steep hill, the foot slides forward in the shoe, and you need that room again so that you're not bumping the front of the shoe and hurting the toenail bed, creating black nails and such. So go up a size in your athletic shoes. It may be a size and a half. It just depends on the brand again. What I wear in Hoka. Hoka is not even universal in their sizing. I have a few pairs that are size 11 in one style, and then in another model I have a size 11.5. So there's no universality even within the brand. So just be cognizant of that. If you're shopping online, a lot of times they'll kind of note that size up, size down. So really read those notes if you can ask questions. That's why I suggest going to a run store to make sure that you can try it on, that you're happy with the size, that the sales clerk gives you their opinion whether it's going to fit you or not. You may have been a size 9 10 years ago and your foot due to gravity and time, perhaps having kids for the women, and your foot may be a different size now. So recognize that. You may have 2 different size feet. It's not uncommon to see a half size different in feet. What we do there is we fit to the larger foot. So one may measure a 9 and the other a 9.5. In that case, we fit to a 10.5 and make sure that the smaller foot doesn't feel like it's swimming. Okay, but you want to fit to the larger foot for comfort. It's important that the arch feels like it's in the right spot. We don't want it to create any hot spots underfoot. You shouldn't feel that. If you feel anything right away, it's good just to kind of take that shoe off. It shouldn't feel overbearing in the arch, like it's pushing and digging into the arch. It just should feel like a bedroom slipper, like you didn't even put anything on. It should feel like a part of your foot. You just kind of get that sensation. That's what you're looking for when you slip a shoe on. Talk about a few other things in fitting here, but the other thing that I like to look at is the overlays, and that's the material that the company uses to create structure on top of the foot. So we call the upper is the piece of material that goes on top of the foot and kind of holds the foot down onto the platform of the shoe. And those overlays create the structure so that the foot doesn't feel it's going to slide off the platform laterally, side to side. Those overlays, they're becoming better and better about creating seam-free overlays, so the material does not need a seam or a stitching to hold the foot in place. They're using heat welds and other 3D printing technologies to make this happen, which is incredible. But just make sure that when you flex your foot, okay, when you go and bend your toe, lift your heel off the ground and just bend that toe and keep the toes on the ground, and you flex. Make sure that flexion point, that crease that's created, doesn't press down onto the top of your foot and annoy it. It doesn't rub the top of the foot. Those overlays that are at the front of the shoe, they don't press down on any of the toes. If they do have seams, that they don't rub any of the toes. For instance, I did a review of the ENDA shoes. They're out of Kenya, new company. There's 2 models out, and I have the lightweight version. I love it. It's called the E10. I absolutely love the fit and function of the shoe. There is one little kind of they used a kind of, you can feel there's a stitch there, but I think they tried to hide it with a heat weld, an overlay that's a material that covers up the seam, but that seam presses down on my pinky toe and kind of causes irritation. It's kind of dissipated. It's gone away over the course of time as I've worn the shoe. I still know it's there, but it's not as abrasive. But if you can recognize that up front, that you think something's going to rub or it just doesn't feel right from those overlays, be cautious of that. At the same time, there's a lot of shoes that don't have a lot of overlays. We're seeing a lot more knit shoes, which is really neat. I like the technology there. It's very comfortable. Moves with the foot, but it doesn't create a lot of structure. Some are trying to create more. I guess you would say more of a stitch count, a higher stitch count, so that it creates kind of support in certain sections of the upper material, so that they still have the same function as an overlay, but it may feel that your foot just doesn't want to stay at the platform. For instance, I have the Nike Wild Horse, the newest. I think it's the 8, if I remember off the top of my head. And that shoe, although extremely comfortable underfoot, I love how it feels underfoot. I took it on some technical terrain, pretty rocky, pretty rooty, and the shoe just did not feel like it was staying under my foot. It just kept shifting because of the upper material is just too loose. There's not enough structure and overlays to the shoe to kind of hold the foot in place over the platform, over the midsole material. So I caution you, it's hard to know that. You can kind of do a little bit lateral side to side movements while you're at the shop trying on shoes, but it's really hard until you get out there to know whether that foot is going to be it's going to be held in place. And we're going to talk about the lacing and stuff in a bit here that can help with that. But just be aware of those overlays and whether they help control and stabilize the foot. You can kind of feel if your foot's going to shift too much in the shoe. The Escalante by Altra has gone through multiple iterations and has gone back and forth with overlays and how to keep that foot on that platform without increasing weight and changing the fit and kind of function of that shoe, just because it is such a comfortable shoe. But a lot of the complaints is that people don't feel like they have much stability on the platform because it feels like the foot's going to shift left or right due to the fact that there isn't very many overlays. Now they've addressed that in a number of different ways, and I feel the new iterations of that shoe are improving vastly. But it's interesting to watch the companies try to accommodate for that. So the other thing I caution you on is a lot of times people would come in and say, "Oh, my heel's slipping." Now, there's a few things to talk about here. One, if the shoe is very stiff, it's just coming out of the box, hasn't been used, and the foam hasn't been worked in much, it's quite possible, that you're feeling that and that it could go away in time. But you don't want to take that chance. That's not something you really want to take a chance on. So if the shoe has an extra eyelet, an extra eye hole to lace back into, try that first and see if that tightens the collar and secures the foot down into the heel counter any better, and then you don't feel any more heel slippage. There's also the looping method. Some call it the marathon knot or marathon lacing, but I'll put a quick video up on YouTube. I'm going to write myself a reminder right now just to put that lacing method up there so that you can see it. It's easier than trying to describe it. Video of lacing. There we go. So that will be on YouTube. I'll get that up on there. But you can try that as well to see if it helps. A certain amount of heel slippage due to the shape of your heel might be okay. Like mine, I know I'm going to have a bit of heel slippage. I don't usually get any blistering, and again, you don't want any friction, obviously. So, if you were to buy a pair of shoes and they were slipping and cause the blister, then, obviously, hopefully they have a good return policy or exchange policy that you can kind of, take those back. But that's the other big thing to look for is heel slippage. If you can stick your finger down the back of the shoe, where if you put your finger down along your Achilles tendon and you can stick your finger down there, make sure that the laces are nice and snug and that your heel is all the way back, and make sure you're relaced. If you can still do it, then it's probably not the right type of fit for you. May even try a half size down in that case to see if that helps at all. But I just caution the heel slippage. Let's see. The other thing that I come across sometimes is the mesh, the upper material. We want it to be breathable, yet we want it to be durable. Some people have a curvature to the big toe in which the end of the nail wears away the material on the upper, and it creates a hole, in the upper material, and obviously that drives people nuts. A lot of people say, is there anything I can do? Well, aside from perhaps putting a little piece of duct tape on the inside of the shoe, there's not much you can do for that shoe. But what I would suggest is that when you're looking at shoes, if you have that problem, pop that big toe up and see if it comes up in the mesh. If it does, first check and make sure that the shoe's not too long. Secondly, I may suggest looking for a pair that has a more durable material that comes up to that that point of the big toe where it's coming up. See if they have something that it's not mesh where that toe pops up. Look for a shoe like that so it doesn't do it. It's not going to really destroy the integrity of the shoe or the function of the shoe. It's more aesthetic. Obviously we don't want walk around with holes in the tops of our shoes. It looks really bad, but functionally it's not going to destroy the shoe. So if it's just your running shoe, it's like I said, you can still use it. It's not going to destroy the shoe at all, but just something to be cautious of. The other thing I like to think about is how the bottom of the shoe is designed. Do you have complete ground contact? In other words, does every piece of the shoe on the bottom make contact with the ground, or is it two separate platforms? You've got a platform under the heel, and then it's kind of curved up towards the foot and then comes back down, and then there's a platform underneath the forefoot. Now, in the case where there's not complete ground contact, you may want to just see if you can take a spin in it and notice how that transition feels to you. I always feel that complete ground contact, there's no disruption, from the transition from heel to forefoot or midfoot to forefoot. You don't feel any difference because of that complete ground contact. It's consistent. It's a consistent material, so it feels good underfoot. It functions well underfoot. So I like that personally. You may be fine with the other thing, but just know that there is a difference, and see what you like. Take that into consideration when you're trying them on. Let's see. Now there's a billion different discussions we can get into with cushioning. What's too much? What's too little? What's just right for you? That's kind of you have to kind of see. Now, I have a slew of different shoes. I'm fortunate enough that my wife lets me get shoes and have a very, very different lineup for myself. I have everything from pretty minimal. I have the Merrell Barra Access XTRs. That shoe has been one of my favorite shoes of all time. It is very minimal. It's a zero drop shoe. It's a great hybrid shoe. I can use it road or trail. I don't use it all the time. I like to use it every now and again, kind of for like a normal run. I wouldn't say necessarily not even a moderate long run. I just like it. It's a variation in my lineup that allows me to use my foot and get that proprioception and feel how things are going. So it's a great one to have in my lineup. I may only use it once a week, if that, but I love having that. And then I have lightweight trainers. I have the Enda, which I referred to earlier, the Enda 10. Love that shoe, as I said. It's great for tempo runs. It's great for interval workouts, for strides, for hill repeats. Very, very versatile for workouts. I don't use it for my normal runs. I like to save it for workouts. One that I do use for up pace and even longer runs is I just got the Adidas Boost Adios. Not the Adios, excuse me, the Boston. Love getting back into Adidas. I haven't had Adidas. We didn't have them at the shop, so I didn't use Adidas for a long time. But I was collegiately, at NC State, we ran in Adidas, and it's been some time. But it was, it's nice to put that one back in the lineup. It's lightweight and fast moving. I also use the Hoka Rincon. That's I use that more sparingly, kind of like the Enda 10, but use it more for longer tempos. Whereas the Adidas Boston, I can use on a normal run, on an up tempo run, on a tempo run. I can use it for longer intervals. It's very versatile, so I like that for that purpose. And then I also have the Ultra Boost. I use that on recovery days. I use it on longer runs on the road. I can use it road to dirt. It's, again, pretty versatile for my uses. And I also have the Clifton, the Hoka Clifton. The Clifton is it's a great shoe. Again, I can use it for multiple purposes, multiple surfaces. It serves many purposes, and it's a great thing to have as on a recovery day. I would say, between all of these shoes, I don't use one particularly more than the other. If anything, probably the Ultra Boost is getting the most use right now. But like I said, I don't use one more than the other. It's great not having to have a brand loyalty right now. I enjoy trying different shoes, different ramps. As I said, I have the Merrell, which is zero drop, and I have the Adidas, which I believe is either 10 or 12 millimeters. And it's great to kind of mix that up, to kind of use different muscles, and not always be wearing down on one muscle, all the time. I like that variation. It keeps, I myself have a history with Achilles problems. I have a bit of scar tissue from a micro tear I suffered years ago, and that can really be bothersome, especially if I stay in a low drop shoe for too long, for too many miles. So it's kind of nice to create that variation. Not to say that you can't always have a zero drop shoe, but to have that variation, like I said, it creates different muscle use and variation, so that I don't constantly wear on my Achilles. So if you're having problems, something to consider. In the trail shoes, I have so many different types of trail shoes. Trail shoes vary. I have ones that have different tread for different runs, different stack heights for different durations, different surfaces. So I have the Lone Peak by Altra. I have Trail Talon 235 by Innovate. Again, I have the Nike Wild Horse. I have the new Torrent 2 by Hoka. the Speed Goat, Hoka Speed Goat, and as well as the Stinson, and I even have the Evo Jaws. The Evo Jaws are kind of one of my my go-tos for racing or fast 50Ks. I really enjoy that shoe. So I have all different shoes, and I know people aren't as fortunate as I am. It's one of my kind of vices, if you will, is to have a good variation, a good tool chest, if you will, of shoes that I can go to and pick out different shoes for different uses, and create that variation and based on what I need. So a lot of people are brand loyal, and I don't have anything against that as long as it provides everything that you need and keeps you healthy and running. So I mean, as you can tell for myself, I like whatever fits and functions best for my foot. I think I had loved the Torrent 1, and now in the Torrent 2, I did a long run the other day, and the insole, I don't know whether it was due to moisture within the environment of the shoe itself, or if it was just because the insole was too thin, but the insole folded under the ball of my foot, and the toe of the insole folded all the way back and was under my foot and created a crease. So I had to keep stopping and taking the insole out and fixing it, and then as soon as I hit a downhill again, it would do the same thing. So I'm going to switch my old insole from my Torrent 1s into the new Torrent 2s and see if that fixes it. Because obviously it's permanently creased now. I can't use those. Sometimes you have to be a problem solver. With new shoes, you may love the shoe, just as I do the Torrent 2, but something's not working. Lacing. I said I would talk again about lacing. Lacing can be something, from one model to the next, they may change something within the shoe, on the upper, that maybe it creates a point on top of your foot where it just feels like the laces are pressing down. You feel like you're getting a bruising. In that case, in the video, I'll show a lacing method of how you can take the pressure off as well. So if you feel a pressure on top of your foot at one specific point, let's see if we can alleviate that with a little bit of lacing. And again, I'll post that on that YouTube video. I'll try to get that up as well within the next week. So, be a problem solver with your shoes. There's a million things you can do. You can make shoes more flexible if they feel too stiff. There's not, you don't want to keep doctoring up a shoe if it's really just not working for you, unfortunately. It's probably good to try to find something else. I know it's difficult. You find a shoe, you fall in love with the shoe, and the company changes the shoe on you. And we always say, why did they do that? If you were to compare, let's take the Pegasus, for instance, the Nike Pegasus. That shoe has been around forever. They're in their 37th iteration of the shoe, I believe. That shoe, if you were to compare, just let's say 5 to 7 years ago to what it is now, it pales in comparison. You'd put it on, you'd be like, wow, this feels awful. Obviously the foam is probably, pretty shot. There is a shelf life on your foam. We'll talk about, shelf life and life of the shoes in a moment. But what you want to see is the technologies that have changed, the materials that have changed. So be patient. This new iteration may not be the shoe that you had previously, but they'll recognize that we really hit something on that that whatever 35th edition. Let's use this new technology, but go back to what we were doing with the 35th edition. So they're pretty good. They do listen. They do listen to us, the consumer. They hear our reviews and take those into consideration. So if you have things to say, reach out to the company, let them know. But know that they are trying to evolve the shoe to make it functionally better, to fit you better, to serve you better in the long run. So it's they're doing their best they can, but it's not always best for you. So in the meantime, you may have to find a separate shoe, which either that or scour the internet to to find your old shoe and see if you can pick up a few models in the meantime. So that said, let's go back to the life of the shoe. The life of the shoe, when we talk about if a shoe is worn out, we're talking about the midsole. Now, the midsole is the foam that's between your foot and the rubber that's on the outsole of the shoe or the bottom of the shoe. That black rubber on the bottom is called the outsole, and then the foam, whatever color it may be, with the cushioning, the main cushioning of the shoe, that's what's gonna give out. Now, now that they have all these different types of foams that they're making, there's, the durability is increasing, thankfully, which is great to see. But what happens is the foam finally gives out. It's compressed, and we've gone through the life of the foam. So when that happens, typical. The traditional material is called EVA, ethyl vinyl acetate. That foam, it gets really gummy. It feels really squishy. If you pick up a new shoe, it's a lot more firm. You'll feel your thumb as the shoe wears, it gets gummy, and you kind of press through it pretty easily. Your body may start to show symptoms. You may feel like, oh man, I'm starting to feel it in my joints. That's your body starts to become aware of that at times. But it's really when that foam starts getting super gummy and like you're just not feeling that. It just it just kind of feels like you bog down in the shoe. Feels like it might bottom out. That's a good time to look at replacing it. You can walk in to your run shop and just say, hey, can I feel the new shoe? And what's good to do is feel the forefoot of each shoe. That's the good way. You press down in the middle of the forefoot, kind of right where the end of the tongue is. You're gonna be between the end of the shoe and the end of the tongue. Press down in there and kind of feel each one. Feel how thin yours is versus the new one. Feel how gummy yours is versus the new one. And you can kind of tell. And then if you put the new pair on, you're like, wow, yeah, I can really tell the difference. Then, there's your answer. Because it's tough to go off of what they tell us anymore. How many miles should it be? We're all so different. We're all different body types. We all run different surfaces. And different surfaces have, a different impact as to, how quickly we wear out a shoe. Or how much mountain running we do. Do we do a lot of downhills? Downhills create a lot of pounding on our shoes. So there's a lot that goes into consideration over the life of a shoe and what foam is going to break down. Now, shoes that have the TPU, like the Boost, the Saucony Everrun, those type of shoes, they're going to get a little bit more life out of those foams. So you're paying a little bit more premium price for it, but you should get more durability out of those shoes. That material, it has its molecules and air pockets are the same size, which in the EVA shoes, it's all different sizes. So the larger bubbles in an EVA shoe are going to consume the smaller bubbles in the foam, and that's what degrades or breaks down the shoe. Whereas in TPU, they're all the same size, so you don't have that same compression. It will last you a lot longer, and does better in heat and cold, whereas EVA does not. It breaks down the shoe faster. So all things that happen, things to consider when you're buying a shoe when you think about materials. There's with Nike coming out with their new materials and stuff, it's a great time to be in looking at shoes because there's just so many options out there, and they're all doing amazing things and trying to make us more efficient, less injury prone. I find some of the trends interesting in the industry right now. Nike they're always controversial. There's always something of controversy going on, unfortunately, with Nike. But if you look at them, they are really a leader in the industry, in what they're trying to do and trying to accomplish. There was a book published called "Tread Lightly." It came out after Born to Run, but really looked at minimal footwear and the footwear industry at the time, and what was going on and what people were thinking. Now, in the book, this is well ahead of what Nike has done recently, which I'll get into in a moment. But Nike did not publish, or if they did, it was relatively unknown. They did a study that determined that the traditional stability shoes didn't have the efficacy of limiting overpronation that they wanted, or that they were trying to achieve, or that they felt could really do any help towards an individual. Now, there's not to say that there isn't certain circumstances in which a runner needs stability. Now, overpronation may not necessarily be the circumstance that a runner truly needs stability, which is obviously debatable to what degree they overpronate and if they're having problems and what problems they are. But Nike determined that stability shoes as a whole weren't doing the job. Now, interestingly enough, this fall, Nike will be pulling their last stability shoe, their last stability model, out of the line. So when I talk about stability models, I'm referring to the anti-pronation devices that we put into the shoes. Nike used a dynamic support system. Many companies use a simple post, which is just creating a denser foam on the inside of the foot to prevent the foot from rolling inward. So it's interesting to see that they're moving totally away from stability shoes. Nike's kind of they did their research. They feel that we don't need that overstabilization of the foot as much as we initially thought. The other thing that I find interesting, aside from what everybody talks about in the new Next percents and carbon fiber plates, that's a whole nother conversation, is their Nike React Infinity Run series. They have the Nike Infinity React and the Nike Infinity React Miler. The Miler is just kind of a dumbed down version, doesn't have the React material, I believe. But the Miler, they're toting that as a reduction in injury shoe. They're not claiming that you're going to have X amount of chance of or likelihood of getting injured, but it's really fascinating to see that they're trying to create through the dynamics and motion and materials of the shoe that they are saying that we're going to get less likelihood of being injured if we train in this shoe. I think that story it's been missed with that shoe. Especially since that shoe hit and then the pandemic hit. It didn't really give much time for the story to be told. It's an interesting shoe. I do have that one as well. The upper is it's interesting. It's pretty low volume. Doesn't have a lot of room for a higher volume foot. The lacing is very minimal, so again, it's not something that snugs the foot down or holds the heel into the counter. I think in future iterations they're going to have to do something with the upper to make it, a better fit, and B, fit more feet. Underfoot it feels pretty good. Definitely different. It's there's a bevel to the shoe, so it has a rounded bottom, and that's part of the technology and hoping to keep people less, prevent them from being injured. Forgive me there. Worth looking into. And seeing, I'll be interested to see what happens. What Nike's finding as more and more people buy that shoe, and seeing how that goes forward. Nike has been kind of notorious for putting a shoe and a technology in line and saying, this is it, this is the new material, and going forward, this is going to be kind of the revolution and how shoes go forward. We looked at that with like the lunar technology in theirs, and numerous other projects that they've come and gone with. So we'll see how this goes. I'd love to see footwear that can help reduce the risk of injury. I think that would be fantastic for all of us, that struggle with injury. But the reality is, as kind of I've talked with multiple PTs on this show, is that we need to take the responsibility ourselves, and in our own running. Sure, some things can happen with a shoe, that can lead to an overuse injury or problems. But we have to be cognizant of not only our strength and flexibility, but our running form, and make sure that we are running properly and not putting ourselves in danger of getting injured. So whether that be through proper footwear. I wouldn't say it's necessarily all on footwear. I think it's more on us making sure that we are doing all the ancillary things that we can to make sure that we're not increasing our likelihood of injury due to the fact that we have a strength discrepancy or a lack of mobility and flexibility. So be aware of those things, the bottom line, I guess, when it comes to footwear is just make sure it feels good to you. That's what you should be happy with your footwear. I hate it when I have a shoe that I get and it just it sits in my closet. I just have to give it away. I want a shoe that fits and functions with my foot and with me. I feel one and able to just put on a shoe and not worry about it. Just go for a run. I do have I have 2 pairs of the Next Percents. The first pair, that shoe again, it's not built for a ton of miles. That foam breaks down rather quickly, and I was getting a lot of ankle trouble just because with my foot strike, I strike very laterally on the side of my foot, and I stay laterally, which we term underpronation or supination. So my foot stays on the outside, and I ride that outside. My foot doesn't come into neutral. It just stays. And so with a shoe like that, or like a Hoka with that much stack height, that much foam in between my foot and the ground, I press down on that lateral side and I break that foam down. And what ends up happening is I create a wedge in that foam because all my pressure is staying on that one side. So the shoe gets wedged, and it just creates a more dramatic effect since I've broken that shoe down. And my foot stays, it goes more and more to the outside because that foam is getting, shrinking more and more on the outside of the foot. So it turns my foot out even more, stretching the tendons on the outside of my foot and ankle, and thus leading to, to problems for me. So, look at your shoes and how they're breaking down. If you stand in front of a mirror and you're like me, you can see the foot just tipping out because the foam is broke down that much. That's a good sign that you should replace those shoes. If you're wearing, the big toe of the shoe off and you're having some medial or inside of the knee or shin splint issues, also a good thing to look at. So when we look at the wear pattern of the shoe, we look at the forefoot. That's key to looking at how you're wearing the shoe. If you're a heel striker, you're going to wear that outside lateral heel. Okay. That's where you land. You're as a heel striker, that's, the brunt of your impact coming down, 3 to 4 times your body weight is coming down on the heel there. So that's where you're going to see the most wear. So that doesn't tell the tail. The tail is, when that foot lands and it starts to pronate. Pronate is just the motion of the foot and ankle, the movement. And so when it moves and it starts to come into that neutral plane where it comes into where if you were picturing the foot and ankle, the ankle's at 90 degrees or perpendicular to the ground, if it comes down and then breaks that plane, then and continues to what we would say overpronate and go to the inside, then you're going to toe off that big toe. And that's, where we get into what we were talking about earlier with, do we need a stability shoe? Is our problems resulting because of a stability shoe? On the converse, problems can arise from a stability shoe if you don't need it. If you have too much stability in the shoe, it can force the foot out. Just like my foot doesn't need a stability shoe. It would create so much more problems because my foot already lands on the outside and stays to the outside. So, I would be battling the force of the stability in which it would lock up the outside of my leg. So if you're a neutral runner and you're noticing that you're wearing a stability shoe and you're wearing on the pinky toe and you're starting to have, shin pain on the outside of the shin or IT pain, IT band pain, possibly on the outside of the knee, it can be that you're in too much stability. The foot is not being allowed to do what it's wanting to do and the body's getting kind of jammed up, if you will. So, caution you against, too much stability because that can be a detriment to yourself as well. So be careful with that. Let's see. I think the only other thing, I guess, some people say, like, do I need a trail shoe? And trail shoes, they serve a very great function when you run trails a lot. If you run, a lot of road and every once in a while you go onto the trails, a road shoe is going to be fine. If you want to buy a trail shoe to have a trail shoe separately, obviously that's up to you. But if you run trails most of the time and A, you feel like you're missing protection, B, you don't have traction, and C, you don't feel like your current shoe moves well enough with the terrain, the rockiness or technicality of the trail. Those are all things that you may want to consider looking at a trail shoe and seeing if you can find something that meets the needs that you need. Whether it be having a little bit more protection. Some trail shoes have rock guards. Others just have larger lugs for the traction, and that adds the protection of the shoe. Do you need waterproof or Gore-Tex because you're running in a climate that in the winter you get a lot of frozen precipitation? All things to consider. Is a trail shoe necessary? No, it's not, but it can remedy these situations and make you more comfortable, make you less, less, I guess, putting less focus on the trail itself, because you feel comfortable, you feel protected, you feel you're not going to fall, slip, etc. But conversely, you may also buy a trail shoe that adds to the problem. You feel like you don't have the control over your foot that you want. So you have to again find that happy medium where you feel like you can have enough proprioception. Because the trail, obviously, it undulates so much. You want to be able to know what the foot is doing, where it's landing, how it's landing. You don't want to constantly think about having to place your foot. Take those into consideration as well. Just as I talked about with the Wild Horse, make sure you've got good stability on, your foot stays on top of that platform, whether it be through the lacing system or through the overlays of the shoe. The only other thing I will say, I was taking a course last night, and they had mentioned something that I hadn't heard but thought was interesting, is that if the shoe weighs over 440 grams. Now, this was not specific to the size of the individual in which they spoke. So, this may be for, your, let's say, size 12 men's and down. But it may be even slightly, less weight for women. But if the shoe weighs 440 grams, or more, it takes away from the efficiency of running. That, in other words, the shoe is too heavy and it's actually doing a detriment to you. You're not going to be as efficient running in such a heavy shoe. So, 440 grams be aware of that weight and how much your shoe actually weighs. If I were to put that into the conversion here, let's see what it would say. So 440 grams to ounces. Let's see how many ounces that is. So that is, wow, that would be 15.5 ounces. So that's pretty heavy. I don't think you're ever going to find a shoe that's really that heavy. So, but be cognizant of the weight because it can be too light as well. I know that for doing like a road marathon, for instance, I cannot go under 9 ounces, in a shoe. I feel more beat up, more pounded. My legs takes so much more. I don't know if it's the efficiency issue or what it may be, but be aware that something too light, you may not be efficient enough. It may be something that you could work to over time. I'm not saying that you never could, but just be aware of that as well. So all things to consider. And if you have other questions, by all means, please reach out. I did do a blog post on my blog a while back, my MR Runningpains blog, about shoe fitting. Some of this stuff is in there. You'll see another article about trail running shoes and as well as an article about socks. So if you want to check out my blog, some other resources on there. I'll get this YouTube video up probably by weekend's end. The video about lacing. Also going to be posting some other new videos as well. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the ones that are on there. I've just posted one about using your buff or your neck bandana to create an ice bandana for hot weather running. My newsletter will be coming out. I try to make that extremely informative. So if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, please visit my website, mrrunningpains.com. You can find me on Facebook, MR Running Pains Coaching, and if you have questions on coaching, I've got about I'm probably under 10 spots left right now. Really, again, thank you all for reaching out for coaching. Sincerely appreciate that. It's been wonderful to meet new people and hopefully help them reach new goals and share that journey together. So thank you all for that. What else? The FKT is scheduled for next weekend. I'm feeling a bit overtrained at the moment, unfortunately. It came on kind of, over time. I thought I was just tired from training, but I've really been pretty rough lately, and I kind of been following this trend. I think I'm going to do a podcast on fatigue and overtraining. I think it's something that I've kind of thought for a while. I just need to take a break, and I think it's time for me to take a break. I don't know. We'll see if I can go after this FKT still. It just may not be in the cards, but we'll see. I hope I still can. It's been a goal. But we'll see how my body's doing. I gotta listen. Once again, thank you for listening. Thanks for being a part of this. Again, any comments, questions, future episodes you'd like to hear, guests, that you think would be a welcome addition, I welcome all of that. You can reach me at runningpains@gmail.com or through my website. You can reach me through Facebook, Instagram, and Strava, of course. So I really thank you guys. And I hope everything's going well. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. And until next time, have a great day. Run on.